Welcome back, Poggers, to another week of the Pog State. Things are heating up in the LCK, and it's time to get all things playoffs. As per usual, I have the entire LCK crew here. Valdes to my left, and to my right, interview style, as if we're on a late-night TV show. It is Chronicler and Wolf. How you doing, gentlemen?
Doing great. It's pretty hot, but we got our Hawaiian shirts on, so I'm staying cool.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. I like how I avoided most of the Hawaiian-ness, because I'm not a gigantic fan of the Hawaiian shirt.
Yours is a very plain Hawaiian shirt. I don't think I've seen
you got
a more
sailboats
plain
on. It
Hawaiian
looks
shirt.
you look like a sailor more than you're going to Hawaii.
Like it, but my father actually had he had a huge obsession with Hawaiian shirts for a little while, and it was right when I was at the peak of thinking my dad wasn't very cool, and he was never all that cool, to be perfectly honest. However, this was when I was like, I don't want to do anything my dad ever does, and that mindset is stuck in my brain. So what remains is hatred for Hawaiian shirts. So I apologize to anyone that loves them, especially to James, our producer, because he wears them almost every single day. All right, now it's time to get into the thick of things. We are currently in the middle of week 7. We have 4 more weeks to go, including this one, and we have to work out who is going to be going to the playoffs. So we have decided to dedicate this entire week to trying to work out who the most likely candidates are. And I think the top 4 is pretty sorted out, but we're going to go through it week by week. We, in fact, and we can bring it up on the screen for you, have all predicted the last 4 weeks of play. And I think all of us got the first few matches wrong because we did this before this week started. And so I don't know whether it's going to be all that accurate. But as far as how the teams are playing right now, these are what our predictions are going to be. So, gentlemen, let's just get right into it. Let's have a look at our week 7 and have a look at and week 8, because we're, I guess, halfway through week 7. So let's bring up week 8 as well, and just talk about what we think is going to happen and how important these matches are. Because I think week 7 and week 8 looks cut and dry, but already we've seen the upsets starting. I guess Chronicler, we'll start with you. Which were the teams that you thought were going to overperform?
I personally was expecting, or am expecting rather, for Liv Sandbox to do well. I don't think they'll actually win, but I want to just grab games as much as they can. I think they are the team that I currently have the highest faith in to make it. Outside of, the top 4. And even the top 4, I think this is the top 3. I'm still not 100% sold on T1. Feel like there is still some aspects there that kind of scare me. And I was expecting Humble Life to do well. But I'm not feeling great about that one anymore.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about not expecting Hana Life to do as well. I picked KT to beat them, which happened, but not as it was more one-sided than I expected. I had a 2-1 for that one. They crushed them completely, and now Hana Life taking a 2-1 over Frederick Brion feels like a little bit more realistic to happen. Like at that time, I was like, I don't think it's going to be a 2-0 because Hana Life not that solid. But after yesterday, I'm like, if I could go back, I might actually put Frederick Brion winning that one.
Yeah, it was not great. Valdez, how about you? How did you fare on the KT versus Hanwha train?
Yeah, also predicted KT to win, but with the 2-1, right? I think Humble Life is the one team that we're all kind of a little bit split on. With just looking at some of the, at least for week 7 and week 8, but I think also for future weeks as well. And I think it kind of makes sense just because, we're expecting so much from some of the players on the team, but they can't carry the team as hard as we would like them to. And so at times we just expect other teams to win or not, and it's kind of all over the place for them.
I feel like Humble Life Esports are playing illogically bad. And that really ruins my ability to predict how they're going to do. Because I look at the sum of their parts, I look at each of the matchups, and I'm like, oh, well, that wins, they win. But then they pick split push comps and team fight and just do really dumb stuff, and it doesn't really work out. And you can tell that I'm a bit salty because I straight ran head first into KT destroying them.
You also are the only one who we all have the same predictions for week 8, except for Hanwha, except that you have them taking 1 game off Nomshim. Probably feels pretty bad right about now.
Hey, Frederick Brion took a game off them as well, okay? I stand by that one. I reckon that Humble Life Esports can take games off every team. I just think they might just happen to lose every single match. in 3 games. That's it's the consistency that's a huge problem. And unfortunately, they also lost 0-2 to KT, which is going to be one of their biggest competition moving forward. And I think it's actually crazy that we have Week 8 so incredibly close. I think that it does come down to a lot of these matches being a little bit cut and dry. As we can bring that schedule up onto your screen. You can hopefully look at it somewhere. It's all ethereally located right now, so I don't
Hopefully
necessarily
it's moving
know.
around as you're saying.
Yeah.
Trying to swat it out of the air.
But yeah, there are a lot of matches like Humble Life Esports versus DRX. DRX loses every single match that they play outside of that one against Fred Brion that Fred Brion made up for in the second round. So, look, it's probably just not going to happen for them. Dumb on Kia versus Afrika. I think we're all pretty sure about how that one's going to go.
Yeah.
I was surprised none of you guys had KT taking a map off of Gen.G.
No.
No?
We don't have very much faith in
No.
KT, actually, as it turns out. And this is all part of the KT fans' master plan. As we have to make sure that we predict that KT is going to lose as often as possible in order for them to make playoffs.
Sorry,
and make
KT. I had you
playoffs.
guys winning a lot of my picks.
Yeah, see, this is the problem. I'm predicting Humble Life wins all of these games purely because in my heart of hearts I know KT is going to be the one that makes it. But I need to predict against them.
Predict all
there's-
their competition to win.
There's so many layers to this, Max. I can't. I feel like.
And
this-
it's all excuses for me, predicting so many Humble Life wins and seeing their match. It was last night for us. I know that you guys have seen a few matches into the future. Maybe they looked better against Fred Brion. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that match, so I guess we can't really make that one work. However, if they lost to Fred Brion, then I look even more stupid. So I need any excuse to look less stupid.
Yeah, maybe we need a Pog State episode just where we cross-reference every single belief that we have in the LCK. Where it's all the curses, all the head-to-heads that
And
are
explain
that
all
have
of them.
Everything
Yeah,
happened
yeah.
at some
History.
point, yeah.
We actually we need to have a rundown of the most catastrophic fails when it comes
Everything.
to predictions that we've had.
as
We
well.
don't need to
Yeah.
show first place.
All right, so
though,
I want
because
to bring something up though. I noticed that Brendan, you and Chronicler think that DRX is gonna take a game off of Afrika.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, you guys aren't. You guys don't really like Afrika very much, do you?
I'm a little
Yeah, I
bit
don't
shocked
know.
by that one. I feel like stylistically, the way those two teams match up to is super good for Afrika. I think they just crush them in the early game and DRX falls apart. I don't think DRX is a team that can come back from that.
I actually have DRX losing every single match 0-2.
I
for
think
the rest
that's
of the
the
season.
one. Let me just double. I think that's the one match where I have DRX taking one game.
Just wait till we get.
Yeah, I
to
think I put
Is
them
that
at
because
0
you
on
couldn't, in your
everything.
right
Just
mind,
one-
have them losing every single game?
Just wait till
No,
we get to week 9. Then we'll have something to talk about. But I think that DRX, they've won single games throughout the split as well, right?
That's true. They have.
So I don't think predicting them to
Yeah.
win a single match is crazy. I also think that I don't know what it's going to be, but every time we're in general consensus if it's going to happen, there's going to be one match
Something.
next week that is just going to completely throw us. And
Yeah.
I wonder which is it Afrika just 2-0ing dumb one?
Doesn't
what
it have to be a Fred Brion game?
No. I'm
But
just
normally,
it probably
I think
would
that's
be
decently
normally.
good
probably
chance.
would be. Yeah.
like Fred Brion beating T1. That could be the thing.
And there is the. Hang on. Yeah.
And
yeah,
guess
Chronicler did
Yeah,
it.
Chronicler did it.
Chronicler did it.
Someone did it. I knew someone did. Someone
Yeah.
had to have jumped on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I can read my legible scroll here, I've got T1 with a 2-0 on that one, and
Yeah.
feeling pretty confident.
I don't know
about
if
it.
you guys have done a lot of pick'ems just in general, but if you always predict the winner, the favorite to always win, it never ever works.
There's
You're
always
always
mayhem.
wrong. But just in general, there's always upsets.
Yeah.
And already we already have Liv Sandbox taking a win.
I mean,
right?
you'll
That wasn't
see that I've
supposed to
got
happen.
mine. I went and rethought 25 times. I don't know. I don't want to bring up onto the screen what I actually put down because it was all in messy handwriting, like I'm a caveman, and where we found this document from 300 years ago, and it's look, it's
Yeah,
cute. He
it's
just learned how to use a
Max
pencil.
used a scanner. What the hell? A scanner in 2021.
No, I didn't use this. I
He sent
printed,
the
I
fax
printed it
machine
out.
to James.
I did the ultimate lazy move,
Did
right?
you take a picture with your phone?
Yeah, I printed it out, drew a legible
Yeah.
scroll, and then took a photo of it and said, "James, deal with this." That was my strategy.
Good luck.
However, week 8, I'm feeling pretty confident in, to be perfectly honest. I feel like week 8 is one of those weeks where it's a lot of our top teams getting tested, but not a lot of these contentious middle of the pack matches.
What do you guys think about KT versus Gen.G for next week now?
That's what I'm saying. I gave KT a game. I'm still holding with that. I still feel like they're going to take a game. I think Gen.G will win the best of 3.
Us 3 did 2-0 Gen.G.
Yeah.
But like,
we predicted this before we had Friday's matches, though.
I don't think it would have changed it for me, because I don't think that what KT did, which is hard stomp their lanes and like hard stomp their skirmishers, you're going to be able to do against Gen.G. And also I think 5kit, if he plays again, is not going to have as easy a time, which is a pretty big problem. Actually, if there's a match where I'm looking towards that week that can have upset, I actually think weirdly it's Nongshim versus Hanwha. Which like I don't feel like
explain yourself.
I'm like, oh no, that Gen.G prediction
I have
in the finals.
written down.
Go back to this
2-1 on my
again.
sheet.
I don't feel like it should be, but that is one of those matches where it just seems to me like it'd be so perfect for Hanwha to completely demolish Nongshim and then still lose everything else and not make playoffs.
Oh my god, he's done it. He's beginning to believe in the way of the
believing
LCK.
in the curses.
No. I'm not saying curses. Like we've seen a lot of these upsets happen where teams can have a really good form on a specific day. I think Hanwha is one of those teams. And while I think Nongshim is currently our best team in the LCK over Gen.G, not by a large margin, but by a margin, I can see it, you know?
I mean, there are holes in the drafting, right? We saw some pretty wacko drafting yesterday. They face-up picked the Jace when Wukong was available. That was pretty weird.
I think they just didn't care about Fredit Brion at all.
Yeah.
And they're like,
I hope that's the reason.
Take all of your best picks. Like, we just want a bit of a challenge. Please give us something so that we can have a decent game. Because they walked into everything, right? Like, Lava picks Lucian for what feels like the first time in the second round, or like the first time in like multiple weeks, because he's not allowed to play that champion. He was way too good at it. It was banned every single match, and Nongshim's like, we don't care. Play it. We'll play Yasuo into it. You know, like, it'll be fine.
You know what's crazy about it is normally when you see a draft like that, what Nongshim has done, like all the players are like laughing their asses off. They're like, yeah, we're going to play this weird Yasuo comp. But everybody looked extremely stressed out. Like, okay, we have to use Yasuo to salvage this draft now. And like, let's see if we can figure this out. Like,
I don't even think it was nerfs. I think Valdes mentioned this yesterday. I don't know if it was on or off air. But Nongshim just looked like a team where they're simultaneously extremely humble and extremely like take everything serious without there being pressure. Like they just seem like we just want to be the best team. Afterwards, Doctor was like, "Yeah, I made so many mistakes." When like got Aphelios one game and then like 1v9,
and also had that one team fight on Ezreal that makes me think like maybe he's just the best Ezreal in the LCK. And like, I
so many.
Believe it.
Yeah.
I was watching. I was like, holy crap!
I was yelling at the TV.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, at the same time, Rich had like one of the most incredibly clutch ultimates where he found 2 bits of wall with 2 different players that somehow were there, and I think it was also Infernal Rift, so it was even harder to find bits of wall in that particular game, but peeled really, really well. But Docdom just everywhere he needed to be. Oh my god, it was just incredible. But they outplayed their way through that series. The drafting was not exactly.
Yeah, I'm hoping that was them not taking Fredit Brion seriously, and this is not just some glaring weakness we've kind of overlooked. Is that there's some weird stuff going on. Their priority on the top lane is a little bit off. So hoping for the best because I want Nongshim to do well.
All right, let's see how much Wolf is hoping for the best. I'm just going to go through. We've got a 2-0 here. 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 We've got a 2-1 here.
Where's my 2-1?
2-1 that I put.
What?
It's the 2-1 that we need to be a 2-1. It doesn't matter which way it goes in my personal opinion.
I don't care.
It better be a freaking 2-1. That's all I'm saying.
That's from Gen.G.
Yeah, that's the last match. So, Wolf, you've got them winning all 6 of their remaining games, which is exactly what I have as well. And I think probably what everybody has.
Same.
Yep.
So I think we're not ready to jump off the hype train at all after that Fredit Brion series, but it was an exciting one, and certainly
really
one
good.
that showed that, the noodle gods can bleed. If that makes sense.
I mean, we didn't talk. I don't know. Like, did we talk enough about Chronicler thinking Fredit Brion's going to beat T1? I feel like that's the one thing we didn't.
Yeah, can you explain yourself there?
No.
Okay, starting off, of course, in Week 9, we have Fredit Brion versus Damwon Kia, which is a match that I regret not choosing Fredit Brion in.
Nobody gave Fredit Brion a game except me.
Yeah, and they're going to win that series.
You all gave
that.
him 2-0.
Yeah, I just realized that they're going to win.
Brion. Although, I mean, Umpty is Fredit Brion's like big win condition, and he's up against Canyon. So now I'm like,
yeah, but he's been up against Canyon for the rest of the year as well.
And also Hoya, who's now their new win condition, is up against Khan. So there's also that.
yeah, I don't know.
Not feeling so good about that one for Fredit Brion.
see.
No, yeah, like they might
But
do the Kingslayer thing, but like
We
I
say
don't
that every
predict based
time.
on weird feelings of like what may or may not happen and like what upset might happen where.
A lot, though.
Yeah,
It's
shouldn't we
not
predict
like,
against what has happened the majority of the time this year, and that is Damwon Kia losing to Fredit Brion?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Although I
literally
feel like the
happened more
curse,
often than not.
the curse is now waning, and Fredit Brion's power is lowering a little bit, so they're only gonna get one game. That was that. Yeah, I think that prediction for me was purely based off of suspicion and like
You're just not ready to go all the way.
off
just
of like
yet.
tarot cards or something. I don't know. Like I pulled it out of thin air.
Oh, it's the 7 swords of Damwon losing a game to
There's no
Fredit Brion.
explanation for that one.
I
Fredit
see
Brion
that
will win a game.
pretty much everybody put Gen.G 2-1 versus Damwon Kia, but Max is like he left it kind of ambiguous. Like his 0/1 there makes it like a little bit unclear whether or not he thinks Gen.G will lose a game or not.
Yeah, I've done all sorts of mentalness as far as
Like,
I hope it
win a
doesn't
game, right?
actually get.
He thinks Gen.G wins or DK wins.
Oh, he
rather.
thinks Damwon Kia wins.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if it's a 0-2 or a.
Wait, which
Is it a 2-1 or a 2-0?
I'm talking about the Gen.G Damwon Kia in Week 9.
Gen.G
At the
Damwon
bottom.
Yeah,
Kia.
it's the Sunday first.
Oh right,
you
so
have
that's
Damwon
1-2.
Kia winning.
I've got that 1-2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprised no one has talked to me about the Friday match.
Talk to me about the Friday match.
Have you got DRX winning or something like
Yeah,
that?
Yeah,
I
he
do.
has DRX over KT, which I was going to get to at some point.
Wait.
Yeah.
That's just intentional feeding. You're intentionally feeding.
That would be,
I
as
don't-
Chronicle would call it, reportable.
Yeah, that is a straight up int. You know, that's
Alright,
like
explain
walking
yourself.
up to a Garen with his ult up as like any champion with like 200 health and being like, "I'll be fine without my flash." You know, that's how intentionally feeding you are.
All right, to explain yourself, though, if you're not intentionally feeding.
I don't think it is. I think that as we get closer and closer to the end of the split, teams that are clearly not having any hope for playoffs anymore are gonna kind of see the pressure of having to actually perform disappear, and it's the same reason why I have Afrika winning 2-0 over KT in the Saturday in Week 10. Is because I think there's a bunch of teams where once the pressure of them having to perform is off, I think they're just going to grab a win. And I looked at the other matches. I don't think there's a way that, and I know you disagree with me on this, Max. You think that DRX is not going to win anything. I think they're going to win one series, and I think against KT is the most likely. Because even though like KT just had a really good series against Hanwha Live, yes, but I didn't see that series, right? Which is important to note. So I didn't see them looking that incredible. And even if they have, I think there's a reason why KT is in the standings where they are right now. Like they had just had one really good series, but they're still barely ahead.
Two, right? Like their last. No.
No,
just one. Just one. Sorry.
It was
Before
one.
going into this week, KT looked pretty.
I'm like, no. They had like 6
Yeah.
good series.
Right,
They
like,
closed it
But
out.
I mean, they
think-
had a rough week last week, right? Their matches were against T1 and
Yeah,
Damwon Kia
but
or
still,
Gen.G,
like,
one of the two.
they've gotten 5 wins over the entire. Like I get that, like they just had a really nice looking start, and then they just lost basically everything.
Oh, I've got KT. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I've got
I know.
KT losing everything
I think
else.
I'm the only one that has them in playoffs.
when
It's
right?
not this one.
When it comes
Yeah.
to consistency, our greatest representation this year for consistency is DRX's ability to lose. That
That's fair.
is the
Pretty
most
much.
consistent factor.
Yeah,
So
no, you're
I am not like there are some things that I'm not very confident in. The thing that I am most confident in
It's DRX
is DRX going 0-6 -12. That's
I also
what I have.
personally think that DRX's bot duo is the worst in the LCK by like a really large margin.
not the
So-
current one.
Okay, who's weaker? Give me your counter example. We're talking, of course, about Taeyun and June.
Yeah. No, I don't think they are. Yeah.
They're not even the duo anymore.
Well,
yeah,
we don't.
What up?
Oh no,
You got Skid in there.
Have you
dude.
seen Zeus?
I mean, sorry, Five Kid.
You mean O-Kid?
I think Hannah and the Light are worse. I think that Noah and Harp are definitely worse. And I might keep playing 5 Kid and Zeus, but again, didn't know that.
I don't think
Noah and Harp.
Taeyun and June are like, when it comes to LCK bottom lanes that have performed this season, I think that they are better than Bao and Becca.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree. With that. I also think they will improve with time because they're very new, and that sort of experience is going to come through eventually. And there were like some flashes of brilliance / feeding from Taeyun, but I think eventually he's going to get there. Like I think eventually this will be a bot duo that's better than it is now. I don't know if I'll say good or great, but right now I just don't see any world where the coordination that KT is showing overall gets beaten by DRX. Like, how do you imagine a world where Jet beats Dove? Like, that's never gonna happen, right? I don't see that. Doran losing to Kingen, probably not gonna happen. Like, I don't see it.
I think that KT winning against Hama Life, I mean, we all watched that series. Like, a lot of it was also Hama Life just like driving straight into a brick wall. Like KT looked great, and their coordination was great.
Well. Yeah, they were in a clown car as they were.
Everybody just like kind of in all different directions. So I do want to see another KT game before we get super hyped. And I do agree that like the DRX bottom lane is pretty weak, but they're very young and they're developing, and also Jet looks pretty good and he's also developing. So I don't actually mind, giving DRX some wins along the way. I don't think they're gonna I don't know if they're going to win a series. Like, I don't necessarily agree with, like, DRX 2-1 KT. I would say maybe, like, 2-1 KT DRX or something like that.
Yeah.
But, I think those young players, especially once they lose some pressure and they get more used to the LCK, like, I think they have some good potential, and I wouldn't be surprised if they
I have them losing most
other
other matches as well, right?
Yeah, no, of course.
It's just...
And I think that, like, you're the one that's going out on a limb to say that this could be an upset, so it probably will be. And I think if you predict the rest of the LCK, based on what we've seen thus far, and this is the trap I fell into, if you predict the rest of it with just the assumed victories, then you're wrong. It's just, you're wrong.
Yeah, there's going to be weird.
I was proved wrong in the first freaking match.
Yeah.
I predicted Gen.G was going to beat Sandbox, right? And then instantly it's like, donk, you're
But
an idiot.
that's the nice thing, right? I think that's
a good thing, generally speaking.
Yeah. It keeps it exciting. Like, if every match goes the way that we expect it to, it will be.
Why do we even cast? Why do we even have a league, right? Like, if that's
but
how it's going to be.
I think it's also important to predict the matches that you expect to happen, so that then you understand exactly what the upsets are. You know? Because if you so basically what we want to do is use this episode to reinforce when an upset does indeed happen, right? So if DRX somehow turn around their season. And right now, they're not out of playoffs contention, technically. Actually, right now, based on you guys watching at home, maybe they are. Because I think mathematically it's impossible for them to qualify
playing Damwon
if they
today.
lose against Damwon here in a few hours.
Which is exactly why when this Pog State episode airs next week, they would have already have 2-0'd Damwon Kia just to ruin the show.
Yes.
I think that I think it's nice that we have a little upset, or I rather have a little upset predicted. I think Wolf is like
a bit of an upset predicted.
No,
Yes.
Honestly, again, it's not that big, guys. Like, KT is still like at the bottom of the standings.
No, I agree, and I think we might have some recency bias. I especially, just because like my Pick'ems here got obliterated by KT's 2-0 over a flailing Hanwha Life that decided that they'd forget how to win the game.
I thought you were about to say a flailka.
Yeah, flailka. What's
kind of like a freaka and flailing.
I like it.
A flailka.
But
that's a cute one.
When you look at most of the big matches, we are generally in agreement, which means that we do have I think we have a fairly consistent power ranking about how we feel that each team will perform. Because if you look at a lot of other situations,
no, we don't.
Gen.G, Damwon, Kia.
Yeah, we need to talk about this. This is very important. I think the rest of them, like the
T1
middle,
Gen.G,
T1 Gen.G and Gen.G Damwon Kia is the one that no one can decide on. Right?
Only me and Max have T1 2-1 Gen.G,
yeah.
And then
I
Wolf
have
has 2-1 Gen.G over T1, and then Mao has 2-0 Gen.G over T1.
Yeah, we literally have like.
Whoa.
Do we have 4 predictions? No, 3.
No,
we have
3.
Because Max, if Max would have gone for the 2-0 or Valdes, it would have been perfect. Then we had everyone.
I mean, I want to see for this game. I'm actually a bit frustrated, right? Because for Gen.G versus T1, I just want to see what the rosters are.
Yeah.
Because if it's Young-J versus Owner, then it's
2-0.
100%. Yeah.
I don't think it will be for this one. There's a
I
big
don't think so
rivalry
either.
between these two teams, right? Like, I think that Gen.G come with
The
their
brother
their
Clid
S-tier
meme
roster.
might be more powerful. Who knows? Everyone knows that Clid doesn't really figure himself out in the T1 series. He's just something mentally that often blocks him. So maybe that's their opportunity to use their secret Young-J weapon.
Yeah, I don't think
it
so.
will. No. I think that after like I think that the Gen.G saw an opportunity to use a player that's been performing like by far as the best jungler in challengers for a series. Didn't work out. Don't expect we're going to see him again. I also don't think that Clid, while his mid to late game might not be the best, his early game is still one of the reasons why Gen.G gets so many free wins.
Yeah, I agree.
Gen.G DK is the other big one, right? On week 9.
I think that it should be.
You voted dumb on Kia.
I did vote a 2-1 though, so I guess like I can't say it's obviously going to
We
be
all have
Damwon
2-1s.
because
I wouldn't
that
be
match.
shocked if Damwon win that. Damwon to me, I'm going to choose Gen.G over them generally because I think that Damwon is. It's like we talk a lot about inconsistency. They are a really, really good example, but their peaks are so high that I also see them. Like, you can say with Hanwha, like, they're up and down, right? But with Damwon Kia, it feels like there's a legitimate shot for them to just win based off how good they are.
yeah,
It just feels like, is the bot lane going to be a small problem
who's
or
going
a
to be
big
playing
problem?
in the bot lane? You know?
Exactly. That's where I'm leaning. Like, I'm leaning towards big problem 2 out of 3 games. You know what I mean?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Especially after that T1 series where we saw, Keria had a great performance, but also Beryl and Ghost it was not so good. It was
Are we
kind
going
of
to see
a
Rahel
feat.
this week? We haven't actually got the rosters. We are currently sitting at Saturday just before the game started. We don't know who's going to be playing for Damwon Kia here. So if it was Rahel and they do manage to crush DRX, do you know what's happened, guys? We've learnt nothing because DRX will lose all of their games. We've already mentioned they are very consistent at losing. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. We won't learn anything about what Damwon Kia are doing until week 8, right?
Yeah.
Until that Afrika series.
Agreed.
That
We don't really know, and it's so hard because I think Ghost looked good for like a game or 2 after his break. After he came back, after that he just like kind of sunk again. But Beryl has been so black and white, where there's glimpses of great Beryl, and then he hooks on Nautilus randomly 40 minutes into a game.
He was like every version of Beryl in one game. If you remember that set game where he makes like 3 sick plays in a
mind-blowingly
row
good.
and then straight runs it.
Well,
Like,
it's so obvious why this happens. He wants to be the playmaker. He wants to have like the Reddit clip, right? I don't think he's actually thinking about whether his plays are being clipped on Reddit, but like that's who he is. He only makes amazing attempted plays, and when those fail, like he gets punished, right? So
but
you
then
see
when
him
those
look-
fail, he just goes and makes them again.
Yeah, so he's just
doesn't
always
care.
trying to have heroic plays. So that's why he looks either amazing or like, okay, he's feeding. Like, what is going on? We need a new sub on this team.
Yeah, I don't know. It might also be to do his role, due to his role in the team, right? Because I think Damwon has been pretty vocal about Beryl's role as like the one that decides the engages, and he used to have a very well calibrated sense for when to go in, and I think that sense is just completely off right now. Like it's just not good at all anymore, and that leads to a lot of. Hillesang is a really good example of this as well, right? Where when he's like in form, all of his engages work out, and I think that Beryl's another player where if he doesn't get back to the form where all his engages work out, he's just going to look really troll like 80% of the time.
But also, if he's ever not on the same page with everyone on his team, then he'll always look stupid no matter what, right?
Agreed.
So I think a lot of it does come down to communication as well.
Agreed.
And I think if you change Ghost out of the team now, I'm interested in seeing what that actually does, right? Like, because Rahel might be a better individual player. We don't actually know. We haven't seen them side by side trying to perform in the LCK. But even if he is it going to be worth the change in communication structure for the team, right? There's a lot of stuff. But we need to move on, guys.
Week 10 time.
Week 10, I think, is a bit of a wacky one because we even start off with a series that we've all decided is going to be a 2-1, and it's 50-50 on who's going to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good about Afrika right now.
Yeah, same.
I'm feeling pretty good about that. At the time,
Right
I was
now,
pretty stressed.
we'll see how it goes by the end of week 10. But
I think because
I
we're
don't
now
know.
feeling down on Humble Life Esports, I
Yeah.
think it's almost guaranteed that they win the series. It's going to be a 2-0.
It's two teams that you can't really have a lot of faith in.
No.
That's the problem. I don't have faith in either of these two teams to win a game, which is why I could have also gone for the Afrika 2-1.
But the thing is, part of why I chose this is the two players I have faith in, no matter what, on Afrika are Keen and Dread. And the two roles, because we don't know who's playing for Honor Life, that I don't have any faith in is the top lane and the jungle.
Good point.
It's a bit like it's like Banjo-Kazooie, isn't it? You know, you like the puzzle piece really fits in.
Exactly.
Yeah, because like Leo and Fly, not exactly playmakers. Deft and Chovy, they're pretty good at the game. I think bottom lane, it's like even, and top side, it's like jungler and top lane exist. Humble Life Esports, you know? It's really rough, but the pieces do fit kind of beautifully into this like wonderful little cube that you can now put on your wall and have a look at.
Yeah, we'll see if they put Chovy on carry champions in their next few series, or if they decide to do something different. The Lulu.
I mean, the
game didn't work
Aurelia
out.
situation didn't really work, did it?
He that game. If we could talk about that game for a second, it was so weird. How many times he was literally so close to a team fight just below him, and he was like, "Well, I'll get the CS instead. I won't come in. I won't."
Is it weird or is it true?
It was also like the second game especially. He was like playing into Braum with exhaust. Like you're Aurelia. Like, what are you gonna do? In game one, I stand by. Was just blatant misexecution of their composition, where they kept trying to overforce into comp that wants a skirmish when you have beautiful
They were playing
1-3-1.
Aurelia, Camille, and decided not to 1-3-1.
Yes, which the worst part about that is you can still team fight with that comp if you like wait for your actual spikes
But you
to
shouldn't
hit.
try to.
Well, you don't have to, but like you can. Like Camille and Aurelia both are valued not just because they're amazing in side lanes, but also because they're split pushers that can actually team fight.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have at all when they have no items. Into, what was it, Gwen, Set, Lee?
yeah, at least.
It's like just asking to get clobbered.
Yeah.
It was really bad. I still went with them, but this was previously, right? And like I said, don't have a lot of faith in either team.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to predict.
Turns out to be the Keen difference, as you point out, makes total sense to me.
And then we have Wolf's clincher of the KT Faith, where he has them winning over Live Sandbox. I think that would actually put KT in playoffs.
Yeah, they are in
right?
playoffs
Wow.
in my like.
What a world.
and all of us predicted 2-0. Like, not even just a win for Live Sandbox,
And
but
this
just
was
a
also
crushing
prior
of Live Sandbox.
to Live Sandbox upsetting Gen.G.
Yeah.
That's where we decided to put it. So we just didn't have a lot of faith in KT.
I'm not super sold on Live Sandbox consistency per se, and I think this is a matchup again where you can run into trouble in certain matchups like Fate versus Dove. Like I'm super high on Dove. I think I have made
he's
it pretty
great.
clear throughout this podcast, but I think he's a much stronger player than Fate is overall right now. I trust the soul laning in Doran. Like Summit looks great when he plays his best champions, especially the Gnar. But if the drafting is good, like sometimes it looks a little bit weaker. Prince has been more inconsistent as of late. And knowing that, they're more willing now to pull Zeus back in and not play Noah and Harp, which I think is one of their big weaknesses in the last few weeks of play. I'm still feeling pretty good about this prediction at the moment, even with Live Sandbox really good draft against Gen.G.
I think Live Sandbox's bottom lane is going to tear them a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Prince and Effort, I don't want to say they're the best bottom lane, but I would say they're at least top 3, if not
I think
top
they
2.
can play the game against
And-
Dogdom and
Wait,
Kellen, and
Dog-
that's
in the-
pretty
in the
important.
LCK.
That's pretty impressive.
In the LCK.
So then one is Dogdom Kellen.
Yeah.
2 has to be ruler in life, so they have to be top 3.
What about Carrier and Carrier?
Oh yeah, Carrier and Carriers. That's a pretty good lane too.
It doesn't matter who the 80 carry is, actually.
Dang it, we
Like,
got some really good bottom lanes.
Yeah.
They're top 4 though. I reckon they're top 4.
I mean, they're
I mean,
insane.
Effort has
they're
to be
actually
like.
so good.
Effort
like,
must be so mad that Carrier exists because he's had one of his best
Yeah.
seasons so
Yeah,
far.
it's insane.
And
I think-
Carrier's just unfortunately way too good. So he
Ruler
can't be the best.
has had like one of his worst performances I think we've seen in a while out of him. Even though they're still winning most of their games and they're still very consistent, I feel like it hasn't been about Ruler that much this summer season. I would even
I don't
venture
think the
as much
meta's
as to
really
say-
about Like
No.
the hard carry, hyper carry situation.
But when you think about
Unless you're Duck Dom or Prince.
exactly, or unless you're Duck Dom on Aphelios, or you're Duck Dom on Ezreal, or your
Prince on
Keria
Ezreal.
and Teddy Orgumusi, like I kind of actually put Gen.G's bottom on the fourth out of the ones that we're kind of talking about right now at the moment, potentially.
I would agree, actually, for right now.
For right now, like, plus really getting caught and throwing a lot of games as a result in the late game.
But that hasn't actually, like, that specifically hasn't happened, or has barely happened this split, I think. I think that was spring was way more egregious.
I also
this
think
split,
that when Gen.G lose, it's often through jungle mistakes
Yeah.
and mid lane participation not really working.
nothing happening in mid game, and then like the enemy scaling, and then there's one team fight that they almost salvaged but not quite, which was the Dumb Kia game.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting take. Personally, I think that I'm sold on Keria being the best support. I'm not sold on T1 bot lanes being the best, which again is hard to say after seeing what Keria and Guma did to Dumb Kia's bot lane.
And
we have a bit of a split, by the way.
Oh yeah, what's the rest of the contention?
Well, one of the splits we have is with Dom1 Kia and Live Sandbox. Everybody predicted Dom1 Kia, but you and no, actually, I think it was Valdes.
Me and
Valdes,
Valdes,
a couple of
yeah.
sneaky
Chronicler
one
went for the
gamers.
one game, and like I this is one of the only predictions I've looked at so far for myself where I kind of regret. Like I'm like, yeah, I think Live Sandbox definitely take a game there. They actually might even upset. I think, knowing what we know now about their drafting.
Yeah, I don't think they'll win, but I think there'll be like a game where Prince randomly gets Ezreal, or something like that, or Summit gets Nah.
If we have a look
like,
at if we have a look at the position in the stand, like in the season for this game as well, it's Live Sandbox's final game. They might actually be playing for their whole their playoffs dreams at that point in time, right? If they fumble anywhere else, and if other teams overperform, like this could honestly mean that Live Sandbox are fighting for their lives. And that might mean that there's too much pressure and they lose.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And Domlin will be fighting for a seed spot. Like, they could be fighting for third versus second or something, and they're like, oh, we got to get second so we avoid, like, they're going to be fighting really hard. It's going to be a big game.
Yeah, that should be a huge one.
Was it with you, Max, or was it with Valdes that we casted the game where Croco and Summit went 0-7 both? That was like the end of last
where
split.
they had to
Yeah,
clutch,
they had to win.
and
That was
they
when
just
all of the
died.
pressure was
Yeah,
on
yeah.
and they
That's-
just collapsed.
Yeah, like, and it was literally like they just ran it. Like,
and we were both
really,
very depressed.
it was
on that
very
broadcast
sad
as
to
well.
see.
We were all
But-
really high on them right before that as well.
I mean, because that was when Prince had just come in, right? And like, I think that
I think it was when Prince had just had a good series as well,
Yeah.
and we were ready to rate him. Because
And then-
remember, he
That Ezreal
debuted
series.
really poorly.
Yeah.
And then sort of was coming into his own, like, oh, we're figuring it out.
Yeah. I hope that's not the series that I don't think it will. I think Liv Sandbox will get their wins previously, so this game will be really cool to see in playoffs. And I think for Domon it might be more relevant. But yeah, I think Domon at that point, if Domon lose that, I'm just ready to call it like for that playoffs run as well, because that would mean that their bot lane is just still in shambles, and if their bot lane is still in shambles, then I don't think they're getting away with it anymore.
Okay, we need to wrap because we've been talking about this for quite a long time, but I do feel like we need to mention just one of the matches, and that is Nongshim versus Gen.G. I think it's so cute that literally all of us have 2-1 for Nongshim Red Boss.
Oh, on the last game altogether. All the
really
LCK
cute.
casters.
I also think that it's possible that this could be it's unlikely given where we are now, but it could be the matchup that decides first place. So that actually
Pretty
could
cool.
be really massive. Or it could be like, okay, it doesn't mean anything, so neither of these teams care at all. They end up just trying to hide strats because playoffs are upcoming. And it could be actually the most boring, worst series of all time and be completely unhype. But on paper, it should be really good, especially if they are really close for that first place standing, because that would be massive. Because that, of course, gives you the extra advantage in terms of being able to pick your opponent. KT is actually not in the playoffs in mine. I thought they were. They're just below.
Really? Who?
Liv
So,
Sandbox
okay,
and
this is going to
Rico.
give us an opportunity to have a look at what all of our results are going to be at the very end. So let's take a moment just to bring them up onto your screen. And you'll notice that, first off, I need to just say I'm not biased towards Harmolife Esports.
Disclaimer.
I just had faith, right? Like, and a lot of this is going to be about, our feelings towards what's going to happen. And I looked at each of the matches and I was like, yeah, if the trends continue, this is going to be the result. But I think I made a huge error because I don't think that Harmolife Esports are going to make it into the playoffs after all. and I am going to look really stupid with these predictions.
It's hard because I think KT, Fred Brian, Hanwha all suffer the exact same issues, which is that on good days, you're like, I can see why this team could actually be good, but then they just don't do it for like 3 series after that. Whereas Afrika and Live Sandbox have clear problems, but the overall level seems to be a little bit higher, which is also why I think they make it in almost every situation. I think you don't have Afrika making it, Max, which would be the most likely one for me not to make it. If anyone drops, like I think it would be them over Live Sandbox, because Live Sandbox, while I still don't have a lot of faith in them, do think they're like trending up slightly. I think all around the team seems good, and they might still collapse. You know, we don't know. Maybe they just start losing everything. Still possibility. If there's one thing that probably turns out to be wrong, is probably the DK end up a little bit lower. If with how it's looking right now, and T1 end up a bit higher, I can see that go the way. Outside of that, I'm pretty confident in my my standings, because my standings have Damonkia at 3rd. I don't know if there's still a 3rd team. I think that
I got Damonkia at 2nd.
Yeah.
You also have Gen.G at 4th.
Yeah, I do.
Which is pretty surprising.
I'm actually very confident with my top 4, weirdly enough.
Ooh, that's interesting.
I just feel like, I mean, yes, there are a few contentious matches, but I'm feeling really confident with where I've put them, like direction-wise. So
my standings are really similar to Brendan's, actually, and I think that
they're very segmented.
Yeah,
there's a top 4, and then there's a middle 2, and then a bottom 4.
So does that mean that so mine is the weirdest? So I'm the only one that really has a problem.
Because of your Hanwha life.
Because my Hanwha life fandom is just really...
And your lack of faith in Gen.G, because you have Damonkia beating them in that series, that puts them down to 4th.
I mean, if we have a look at...
Atlus, he just has a lot of faith in Damwon.
Yeah, I've just got a lot of faith in Damwon.
Yeah, which I think
Gen.G,
is still fair. I don't think... I think you can reasonably have faith in both Gen.G and Damwon of how the teams are currently looking. And T1 as well. The only one where I think it's a mistake not to have faith in at this point is Nongshim, just because of how well-rounded they look. But outside of that, I think you can make... because I get the case for not being high on Gen.G, right? Because they do have a history of just not performing when it matters in important matches.
And until fielding Young-Jae for some reason.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm burnt by
and
that.
And I think their drafting is still not great. Like, I'm so done with... It's the 3rd game in the best of 3. We're not feeling confident. Let's draft Jinx's ear every time. I'm not a fan of that, but I do think that on the side of Gen.G, you can argue that the consistency of that roster with how swiftly they will dispatch of weaker teams is something that I don't think a lot of other teams match. Damonkia, if the bot lane pulls it together, they look a lot better. T1 look revitalized.
So, one of the reasons why we decided to do this in the first place was actually to kind of talk about which teams, if things go generally as we as a whole expect go, which teams are going to be on the edge, and like how close will it be? And as it turns out, for most of our standings, like for Afrika and Live Sandbox, if they have any upset losses, there's a chance that either Hanwha Life Esports or KT, in Max's case Hanwha Life, in my case KT, actually overtakes them. In Mao's case, it's like it could be Frederick Brion actually who overtakes them.
Mine is a 3 series differential.
Yeah, yours is like pretty cut and dry.
Between 6th and 7th, I'm like, nope. Yeah. Sandbox and Afrika make it.
Not happening.
Nobody else is touching their spots, okay? This is the way it has to go.
The key is we mostly, as a whole, think that Afrika and Live Sandbox are going to make it through. I
think that Afrika are falling off a building. And I think maybe this is being burnt by the fact that I was so high on Afrika, like the last episode. It's actually going to look so stupid if you just recently watched the last episode of the Pog State where I was like, yeah, Afrika, the draft is so good, I love it, everything's just great. And now I'm like, nah, they're not even making playoffs. This is just a travesty.
Max, I get it. I had the same thing in spring.
So let me just run down exactly how getting into Worlds is going to happen here for the LCK. What happens is, if you win Summer, you go to Worlds.
That's one spot.
Congrats, that's one spot.
That's number 1.
The next spot is the team that has the next most championship points after the team that's already qualified, who will likely have the most championship points.
So that
Unless
also applies to if Damonkia does in fact win.
Yep.
So because they already have a ton of points, they're almost guaranteed to
Which
go.
Yeah,
which
so
is-
they will have the most points technically. I think Damonkia almost will just guarantee most points by the end if they make it to the playoffs and don't do too badly. However, it could be another team approaching that, but the next qualification will be championship points. Likely Damonkia, and also the spring
Or
points
Gen.G.
really will be powerful there. So Gen.G with a huge opportunity to get some
So
qualification.
those two spots are basically just to like talk about the context of what Atlus is saying is like Gen.G and Damonkia are like 90% chance going to win.
I mean,
because they're
both
doing
of these
well in
teams
summer
have
as
to
well.
they have to make it to the playoffs, right? And
Yeah.
Nongshim at the moment, they could win. And then Gen.G has to play extraordinarily hard in order to stop Damonkia from instantly just qualifying.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't you also get seeded higher in the gauntlet based on your
Yeah, so you
Your
get
points.
seeded from points
So
distribution. Yeah.
which means that, as you're saying, like, we don't know 100% which seed they're going to be, but the chance of Gen.G and Damon not making it to Worlds are very small.
So also before the gauntlet happens, 3 teams will be going to Worlds no matter what. Like we will know that before the gauntlet starts. We just don't know whether that third team will be going to the group stage or will be going to play-ins.
Yep. And this is actually the really cool thing about having a 4th seed, right? What happens in the gauntlet is you run up the gauntlet as per usual. This is the thing that Gen.G and QV did and were extraordinarily good at it. You know, I think T1 also had that incredible gauntlet run. This is some like the most hype that we have in the LCK, but also the most opportunity for ridiculous stuff to occur. As far as qualification, though, is concerned, the first place team will be our 3rd seed, and then the second place team in the last match of the gauntlet will be going into play-ins at Worlds. But right now, it's looking like it's going to be one of either, you know, Gen.G, T1, Damonkia, or Nongshim. And that means that it's probably not going to be that, because if we've learned anything, predicting this season has been extraordinarily difficult.
There's a chance that Nongshim don't make it to Worlds. If they don't win Summer in any capacity, they'll have like a decent amount of points, but they might not be 3rd in terms of points, or like 2nd, I guess.
You need to be second
After the
Yeah.
winner of Summer in
Yeah.
points. They might not be, depending on who makes
Yeah,
it.
because they
you
probably
know?
will be 3rd
Yeah.
more likely
Yeah,
than
and then if they
anything
lose
else,
in the
that's case.
semifinals, which is where they would, in this scenario, be most likely placed based on their points, then we
they're
just won't see them
they're just
after
out.
like a super dominant Summer. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, let's
Peanut and plans. That's cool too. You know.
I think the really interesting thing is that there's a pretty big parallel between the teams that we expect to barely make it into the playoffs. Those are the same teams we're talking about for like the 4th spot, right? The play-in spot. And it's all going to be about best of 5 performances, which is where things get a little bit hairy for some of these teams, right? Like Live Sandbox can have like that great best of 3 where it's like a tight series, it's pretty short. They might end up taking that 2-0, but you go into a best of 5, some of those cool draft strategies they use get exposed. Some of Nongshim's great drafting we've seen from them this season can get exposed in the best of 5, right? So that's where things get really intense. Like playoffs and Gauntlet are going to be a completely different beast because of that, you know, potentially much, much longer series.
Yeah, there's one last thing that I'd like to discuss, though, and that's sort of how this season has gone so far and what our expectation is based, like, just for how we think the LCK is going. Are we optimistic? Are we pessimistic? And I think that we can all agree that it is really important for the LCK to do well, because this is a region that has been built off excellence for an extraordinarily long time. A lot of our viewership comes from being the best and being really good. And that is not necessarily the case anymore. And by not necessarily, I mean it isn't, because of the LPL, the uprising, the amount of infrastructure that they have, and the amount that they have improved and developed over the last couple of years. And we need to talk about how important it is for the LCK to look better and ask the question, do we look better?
I mean, the reason why the World's Gauntlet exists actually is because Korea, historically for esports, doesn't want to send the team that has the most points in a graph, right? They want to send the team that's performing the best at that moment, right, at the end, which is why Korea's been so dominant even with multiple seeds in the past, even if you go back like 8 years ago, because they're like, okay, it's not just going to be like who has the most points, who did well in spring. It's like, no, who is going to go through this grueling gauntlet right now, this extremely competitive gauntlet to represent Korea, right? And I think that's something that is so important for Korea. It always has been, is how's your form right now? Because you have to represent our country, you have to represent our region. And for that reason, something I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about Worlds Gauntlet is like, there's such an immense amount of pressure for that team that goes to play-ins right now, because if they get destroyed or if they don't make it through or if they get nervous, if they choke at Worlds, it's so scary. So I bet there's a few players who are even scared going into Worlds Gauntlet, like, I don't know if I want to be the 4th seed for Korea. I don't know if I want to be ridiculed if we don't take it home, if we don't make groups, or if we drop out of groups early. It's a really scary season for Korean fans, right, to go into this Worlds.
Yeah, I think it is.
I was, we had that episode where we were eating the hot dogs. And we did I'm just really hungry right now. Like totally off topic now. We had like the optimist versus pessimist
the debate,
argument, the debate, and I was on the pessimist side. And at that time, I actually, some parts of what I was saying, I didn't agree with all of them. Part of it was for the debate, trying to prove a point, but I did agree with some of them. But I'm actually more optimistic now. Towards the end of summer, I feel like a lot of the teams are ramping up, and watching the LPL, they have some incredibly strong teams as well. I don't know if LCK is going to be the best, but I do feel better about the LCK now compared to at the end of round 1, because it wasn't looking so good then, to be honest.
Yeah, there were some odd times. Chronicler, are you feeling the same way?
Yeah, I think that it's also I'm still in touch with a lot of the European scene, obviously, right? Coming from that, and I think they're weirdly down on the LCK in a way that doesn't really make sense to me. Where it's like, LPL is by far the best, and LCK is just, it's not going to happen. And
RNG won 1-3-2. They won one best of 5, and all of a sudden the LCK is the worst region in the world.
And people are like, Mad Lions is a team that is like somewhat binary regarded, where like, yes, they're good, but that best of 5 against Rogue was like a whole ordeal. It was reverse sweep, yada yada yada, and then they almost won against Damwon. Whereas we in the LCK know Damwon fell off a cliff between playoffs and MSI, and also they still won with no bot side, so that's not good actually. And I think the LPL is the strongest region right now. But I think we all agree, and I think that if you watch all the LCK and you manage to catch some of the LPL, you generally agree LPL has an insane amount of depth in like the competitiveness of their high level teams. However, I think saying that it's going to be 4 Chinese teams in the quarterfinals, it's never. I mean, you see that a lot, right? Like it's not going to happen. Like we don't know what the meta is going to be. We don't know the form of the teams that are going to be there. But I can guarantee you that like some of the LCK teams are going to still find a way to make it work at Worlds. Which of those it's going to be, I have no clue.
Yeah, I'm glad we're sitting on the same desk, because I'm cautiously optimistic as well. I've got a very similar opinion to to Valdes on this one, because I actually think that because Damwon are not just far and away better, we're not going to have this weird bubble situation. I feel like the teams in the LCK in the summer split are pushing each other so much harder than we saw in spring.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that because I was brought up in a glass ceiling region in the OCE, right? And OCE was not super competitive when it came to the solo queue scene, you might say. I was quite highly ranked until I came to Korea. But the problem is that you can see a team be extraordinarily dominant against their peers, and we had this time and time again. We were like, oh, this team looks so good! And then they go overseas and it just doesn't really work. And I think that I have this huge aversion to teams that are just crushing their own region and then feeling confident afterwards. I've been burnt by it so many times. Yeah. And it's really, really difficult.
RNG's run through getting qualified for MSI and actually winning the LPL last time is a similar story to where Damwon could be actually at the end of this season, where they go in as like 3rd seed and have a really, really hard playoff run, barely win the finals, and then go to Worlds. And it's like, okay, maybe in that interim they fix the bottom lane, or maybe they grow as a team enough. I mean, it's hard to imagine Damwon growing more. They need to grow more if they're going to win. But every team that goes through this right now and how competitive our top 4 teams are right now means that they will be forged in like almost literal fire, like on their way to Worlds. And I completely agree that that gives us a way better chance. If we had one team at the top, if Nongshim was just beating everybody, or if we had Gen.G just number one, most consistent as we had like even 4 weeks ago, we were like, well, this is just it.
Yeah.
Then I'd be really worried. But right now, I'm starting to feel like a little bit of optimism. Maybe not as much as you guys, but a little bit.
Yeah, and also I want to go to like how we're playing the game as well, because I think at the start of summer, things were still very slow. Yes, we did have a relatively competitive top side, even though Gen.G were kind of winning everything. But the meta, we were playing it very, very slow. It felt like we weren't doing the same things as other regions. I think that has, over the last 2 weeks, really changed for the LCK. We're making proactive plays. There are still some of those resident sleeper matches, which we do like to, meme about and talk about, but they are way more few and far between, and we've seen proactivity and decisiveness win over and over again. And what that does is that reinforces that this is good, and this is how we win games. And if you see that the LCK's hold of the meta is also moving in a direction that fits with the overall take on how the meta is supposed to be played, gives me even more confidence. And I'm like, we're going to win. And then I look at the LPL again and I'm like, we're going to lose, but we're not going to lose to another region. It's only going to be the LPL. But if it's Korea versus China in the final like it was last time, that was a really awesome final.
That was amazing.
In MSI and at Worlds as well. I thought that Suning had a pretty incredible run to go from, the third seed in order, and then go through all of their peers in order to get there.
You know that meme that's like how it started and like how it's going?
Yeah.
I feel like for Korea right now, it's like how it started is like Damwon Kia lifting the Worlds trophy, and like if how it's going is actually not Nongshim taking the first seed and going to Worlds, I think I'm okay with that. Like, I think a lot of people aren't, but I'm okay with that. A lot of people go, well, if it's not the best team from Korea from last year, then they must just be bad now. I'm like, no, it's actually okay that we evolved.
So I think that we have been rambling for quite some time. I want to say thank you so much for bearing witness to what were some definitely out there predictions, but predictions that I think make sense when you look at them in isolation, although in my case especially, like the result probably not actually going to happen. So where are the upsets? What are we actually going to see? I'd actually love to hear your opinion about the bottom 2 teams that are going to be making it into the playoffs, because are you like me? Are you an attender of the Church of Chovy, or are you in fact not, and you think that it's going to be something perhaps a little bit more realistic? But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode of the Pog State. Thank you so much for watching as per usual. If you could leave a like down below, that would be absolutely fantastic. Subscribing is always phenomenal. If you're just listening to the audio version, it'd be cool if you left reviews or did whatever cool stuff you could do to help us out there. But you just listening or watching just means the world. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks as we go back and have a look at how silly we are with the next episode of the Pog State. For now, stay classy.
Standing on the edge of this big